Hi, welcome to Path to Programming. Today, we're going to be doing a simple TDD exercise. This exercise is one that I teach in my TDD workshop, and I'm going to show how I would solve this problem. First, before we begin, let's talk a little bit about the benefits to TDD. So TDD is test-driven development. And TDD can help us write less bugs, improve our design, and also we can take smaller steps. We can focus in on one behavior we'd like to introduce, and we write a failing test for that. Then we write the simplest code to make that test pass. And then we move to the refactor stage where we make the code more readable and maintainable. And this process just keeps going on and on. All right, let's jump into the exercise. So this is an acronym generator. And so this is for a company, for maybe an employee directory. We're gonna find the initials given a first and last name. So normally the acronym is always the first letter of your first name and the first letter of your last name in uppercase. We'll just start, I'll move to this aside. Here's some cases here. So Thomas Meyer would become TM. So we can just start with the simplest case and start writing tests for that. So first thing we do is we create a test file. Okay, so the first step is we'll just declare a test. And this has the first case as two names, but I believe that the simplest case is actually somebody with just one name, or even better, how about an empty string? So empty string. So empty string returns empty string. Let's start by declaring our class. So acronym generator. Okay, and so you'll see it's red here, and we're really just making design decisions right now. One of the most common questions that I get, and that I also had when I started writing TDD, is how am I going to test something that doesn't exist? Well, we have to use our imagination here. We have to think about what is the design that we want. So we've already named this acronym generator. So what would a method be called? So maybe acronym generator. Um, Maybe we would use a verb and just say generate. And now we're making design decisions about the inputs and outputs. So generate would take a string. So we can pass in our string here. So we'll just say empty. And then we'll want to return a string. We can just call this result. And now you can use assert j. Say assert that the actual, which is the result, is equal to an empty string. Okay, and so now our test is read. So now we have to create some classes. And I actually just want to create this right down here. Yeah. Okay, so now we have this class here, and now we generate the method. We'll call this full name, and now our test is compiling. Okay, so we've written our test. Now run it, and we expected an empty string. We actually got null. So what is the simplest thing that we can do to make this test pass? Right, so let's return string, an empty string. Okay, and we did a little refactor there by changing this is empty. So run the test. Okay, so at this point we've done red and then green, and we're doing some refactoring here, just cleaning up the test. Everything looks good to me. So run the test again. You can run these tests very fast. They only take 40 milliseconds at this point. It's only one test. It's very simple. Okay, let's go to the next test case. So this next test case will be maybe just a first name. First name turns. Okay, first name returns first name initial. Okay, so okay, so this is our test. We call the method generate using Tom, and we assert that it returns t. Okay, so if we look at our test failure, which is a very important step, we always want to make sure that we get in the habit of looking at the test failure. We'll see that we expected t, capital T, we actually got a blank string. So now we can go to our implementation and we can fix that. So what is the simplest thing we can do? So we can actually just check if this is empty and then return the blank string. And if else, we'll grab the first letter of this name. So let's do that. So, and let's use a substring. So this will just grab the first one on the test, and let's reformat. So now we're to the refactor stage. So I'll clean up some of the mistakes that I made here, because really I was focused on making the test pass. I wasn't worried about bad formatting or how I usually do things with curly braces. I just wrote it out pretty quickly so that I can focus on getting the test to pass. So at this point, we have two passing tests, and I'm about to write a third test. Before that, I don't want to write this out again. So I want to bring this out and just declare it here. I run the test, they're still passing. Awesome. And then I'm going to change the view mode here. Here's a little trick. You can dock unpinned, and then you can just click off. So that's pretty nice. Okay, so now we have this declaration here. There's one more thing I want to introduce. It's called parameterized test. We're testing the same method, and it's going to be very similar here. So before we introduce the third duplication, we'll just clean up. Let's convert the second test into a parameterized test, and then we'll do the first one. So this is a CSV source. So let's look at the build Gradle first, and notice that I'm using JUnit Jupyter Params, the JUnit version 5.8.2. So that's how I have access to these. Okay, and this is the syntax we use. So basically this is one test case. So let's look at the overall behavior. So turns, okay, so returns acronym, a person's full name. So we'll let it take a full name and then expected acronym. Okay, now first case will be Tom T. Can copy this. We'll replace Tom with full name. Okay, let me run this test. Okay, so now we have Tom's T. There we go. Okay, so now we can delete this test. Now we can bring this test in. So this actually looks like this. I believe that's how we do that. If that works. Okay, so now we have parameterized test. All right, next case. Now this is going to be Schmidt becomes MS. Let's run that. And that's failing. We only get an M. So actually, I think I've taken too big of a step. I'm gonna undo this. Instead, I'm going to do we only did one name here. So instead of tackling the uppercase and the two names, let's just tackle the two names. So now we have our new test case. So instead of SD, we actually got S. So let's fix that. So the simplest thing we can do to make the test pass, well, if these names have spaces between them, then we can definitely split this. We can just say names. So now I have a names. So now we can take the first letter, the first index, and the zero index, and then the first letter of second index. So because we have this case for Tom and that only has one name, I'm actually going to do an if check first. Say if names, we'll just say if it's less than 2, you can just return that. Okay, so that makes sure. So I'll actually call this names, grab the first one, substring it. Now if you run this, we still have Tom passing, and now we have to make this pass. So now I use names, 0. Okay, and now I have that passing. Awesome. So we do have some duplication here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 3 things doing that. So let's do some refactoring. All right, let's just call this name. And now I can abstract this into a method. Well, instead of having substring, let's actually talk about what is our intention here. And to say get initial. So now instead of just using substring, we have some domain language behind that. So we pass it a name and we get the initial. Now I will be able to use this more easily in the future. And at this point, I think I'm okay with how we are. Let's run the test. And we're all good. Now let's go to this case. Now we're dealing with uppercase. Okay, so here, instead of ms lowercase, we get, instead of uppercase, we get the lowercase ms. What we can do is right here, we can just say to uppercase. Yeah, that's a simple thing we can do. We also could have taken a combination of them. Yeah, let's keep adding cases here. So now we have John Eric, JS. Okay, now this is 3 names with a hyphen. So we only actually get S because we're only splitting at a space at this point. So let's tackle this case. When we're trying to make a test case pass, we want to make sure that all of the previous tests are also passing. That's why I'm always running all the tests. Okay, so split actually takes regex. If we look at the, yeah, so we actually have regex here. So the regex to split by spaces and hyphens looks like this. Okay, so now we get J and E, but now we have a problem that we're not getting all 3 names. So let's do something different instead. Maybe after we split, okay, so we'll iterate through each name. So we're iterating through names. And maybe we'll build this string out. We'll call it acronym. Say acronym plus equals get initial name. Okay, and gonna comment this out for a second. And it looks like we didn't get the uppercase case. And there you go. Now I can get rid of all this, refactor, run the test, all green. Now this is saying to convert to a string builder, but I have a better idea. So what we've done here is we've done imperative programming by declaring and by saying that we're saying basically how to do it and not what to do. So let's tell it what to do instead. So we'll write the same thing up here and we'll use streams. So we'll say arrays.stream, and what we'll do is we'll map and we'll on each name we'll call get initial to uppercase. We'll collect joining. All right, now that's all passing. Can reformat here. So one thing we can do is can actually take this and move it into the next one instead. So we'll get all the letters and then we'll uppercase them all. So we'll call it initial. Can get rid of that. Okay, and now I'm going to listen to my IDE here and replace them lambda with a method reference. So right now, there's no reason for us to have to declare this and go a method reference, which is like this get initial. And now we can do the same here. Just do a string to uppercase. And we'll run our test. Delete the code. Run our test one more time. Okay, and now we have a declarative approach here, where instead of telling it how to do it, like iterating through a for loop, we're stating what we want. We want to get the initial, we want to uppercase it, and we want to bring them all back together. And you can see it returns a collector that concatenates the input elements into a string. And yeah, so with spaces, it's just going to join them again. Okay, what's the next step here? We can write a test for this. I believe this should be passing. And that's one mistake that I wish I would have done this first. I'd actually like to reverse those. It'd be better if you would tackle this first and then done the hyphens, because we took too big of a step here. But that's fine. We learned from our mistakes. Last names may also be joined with a dash, so we can make sure that we're satisfying this. Yeah, that's also passing. Now let's add this. Okay, now this is a special case for Vaughn. So In Germany, there are last names which have the leading word von. This shall be abbreviated with a lowercase v. A simple thing we can do is we could actually abstract this into a method. Say to uppercase except for von, and then we can actually reorder these. So I'm going to send this at the top first. So when we get the names, we'll actually just uppercase all the names except for von, and then we'll take the initials. So let's run the test. Okay. Well, I'd actually like to do this a little bit different. That's fine. We'll write it like this. So we'll say we pass it a name, and gonna do uppercase, but we'll do a ternary operator. So we'll say if name equals von, then just return that. And that seems to be passing. Although I don't like how this is done right now. Rather do this, extract this into a method. And now we can do a lambda reference. For safe measure, we can do this one, although I think it will be passing at this point. Okay, and that's all our test cases. This is all that we need to handle for this one. Here's our code, our test code here. Actually, I should have brought this up. You can make this public. We can move it to a different file now. And so now we can use it. Okay, so now we have on the left, we have the test. I actually just move this here. It's actually not necessary to. Okay. So here is our test. It's all of our cases. So we have 9 test cases. And here's our code on the right. First we check that the full name is blank. So we can start to get a little high level language to this as well. We can refactor this even more. So we have some high level language here, and I'd say this is even misleading here to what we're doing if you don't know what this regex is. So let's take either of these and clean it up and see how readable we can make the code now. And we definitely could have done this before in a refactor step, but let's do it right now. So what if we do this? We'll say check for empty. Wow, no, I don't really like that. Okay, full name is blank. It actually is pretty readable. Let's take care of this one though. So what we call this? split by spaces and hyphens. Okay. And now this should read like a book. Generate takes in a full name, returns a string. If full name is blank, return empty string. Then we get an array of names, and we call split by spaces and hyphens, passing the full name. And then we iterate through the names using a stream, and then we map it. First, we apply this function to uppercase except for Vaughn. So all those names get uppercased. And then we get the initial of each one. Get initial, and then we join them back together. And that's how you solve the acronym generator using TDD. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.